Welcome to the After the Show Movie Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Ascully and Cidtalk. We're addicted to movies. Are you? Welcome, Cidtalk. Welcome to this glorious afternoon. How are you doing?
Glorious. Did you get that from the fact that we were just talking about the Inglourious Bastard movie?
Actually, subconsciously, probably.
It's soaked in there.
Yeah.
It is glorious because it's kind of gray and rainy and it's not too hot. It's gorgeous.
It is. Perfect day to watch a movie and not be outside.
Your weather forecast.
No. Well, you were the one talking about the weather.
We're not David Lynch.
No. David Lynch's weather forecast. I really missed that.
Oh.
I watched it every day.
In case people didn't know, every day, starting with COVID, I believe, David Lynch would make a little video of him telling you the weather outside of his house. And that's it. Like nothing else.
Nothing else. Just what it's like in his garden, basically.
Yeah.
I liked it. There was something about it that was soothing and cheerful. Cidtalk, have you any before the after the show discussion, or was that it?
The before the after the show discussion was not even that. I mean, it was just kind of like making our way up here.
Yeah.
Up from the theater room to the office room to make a cup of tea, to play some solitaire, and me saying, I'm not going to say anything about this movie until we start the podcast.
Yes. And you kept your promise?
Because I have a lot, but I'm going to try to, I don't know, make sense of it as we talk.
All right. It is Saturday, June the 1st. Happy June, everybody. We're in June already. It's after the show number 841. We're a movie review podcast. Every week we look at a new movie. This week we're looking at the movie Civil War. It's a 2024 release. Out now on streaming services. It's rated R. And it's from our friends at A24 who sent us a streaming code to review. Cidtalk, can you give us the synopsis of the movie Civil War?
I think the title says it all. It's the part about it being in America in not even now. I think it's in the future.
It is in the future, according to the director.
Okay. Like we're talking.
He didn't say.
Okay. Because there's a mention in the movie. Well, that's it. It's a civil war in America at some point in the future. Not far-flung future.
No.
We won't say that.
Very
it's not
close,
like,
it seems.
There aren't like flying cars or anything like that. But that's the synopsis. So on to the movie.
Well, let me give you the one off the box first.
Oh, right. I forgot. That's very important.
A journey across a dystopian future America, following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. So that's more detail than you.
It is more detail. That's better than a lot of boxes. So
this is A24 we're talking about.
True. They're a class act.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, Cidtalk, what did you think of the movie Civil War?
It's creepy to say that you love it, right? That I love it because it's a well-made, beautiful, well-written, thought-provoking, emotional, gut-wrenching movie because all of those things come together. The quality of it, I love it. And then also, it, of course, makes you think. And if it doesn't make you think, I'm not sure what's going on in your mind, right? I just don't know.
You're like lobotomized or something?
I don't know. I wouldn't insult anyone, but I just think here's the way it looks to me. If you have a very extreme ideology of any kind, any direction of anything on political, religious scheme at all, like on the little map, you can point the arrow any direction. I don't give a shit. I'm not any of that. But you could, on your, as a person, I'm imagining some of your 1-star reviews in the future here a little bit might lean into this, that you might think that this movie is against you or completely supporting you, right? It has that effect. It has no boundary in the movie of what this war was about, the actual ideologies of either side at all. And if you're digging for it, it's not there because I dug for it. No one comments. There's no mention of anything that tells you what it's about.
No, it's very vague.
Yeah, it's vague, but it also is very clear.
Even down to this line in the movie. One person says to another, "Oh, you're the one who took that famous Antifa massacre photo." Now, even that doesn't tell you anything because the massacre could have been either way, right? The Antifa people massacred a bunch of people,
right?
Or the government and massacred
or somebody
the Antifa
did, yeah,
people. Yeah.
And also doesn't measure time because we haven't had anything like that, and
so everything's vague,
right?
Which I think is actually, I've heard some people criticize the movie for not taking a side or having anything, like they say, oh, it doesn't have anything to say because it's too vague.
Right. And I think it would be a lesser if it made a statement. All it's making a statement about, to me, my interpretation, is somewhere along the line, very radical activities start happening from the president and president's office. He's in a third term, which is against the Constitution. So something happened. We don't know anything of the politics at all.
Nothing.
They don't describe anything like at all. Like there's nothing modern in our politics is mentioned or addressed in any way to make you go, oh, they're picking on him or they're picking on him. None of that shit. So you are left to kind of, here's what I find is a beautiful thing about the way it's written, is that it's going to challenge me, whatever thing I think I believe in. And it's also going to enlighten me a little bit that, oh, so if I follow a president who commandeers the government in any way, right? Even if it's something I support,
right,
or it's like the opposite of whatever it is. If it's like, oh, we're going to be wonderful and cure all diseases and feed all children, no, well, somebody's going to be opposed to that, right? Like, so whatever the president does, that makes me think about it, that it's a possibility in some realm or plausibility. And do I have any ideologies that I think that an entire nation should have to adhere to enough to squash everything else? No, I don't. So that makes me think about that a lot. Then again, if you do have an extreme ideology, you will look at this movie possibly and be like, yes, I would die to defend the president, or yes, I would die squashing a fascist government, right? Either one of those. It stimulates everything, which I find, it's hard to do. And I think I'm giving them a little applause here for that.
It also operates like a horror movie. There are parts where I was actually very scared. One particular was near the beginning where you hadn't really established what it's like out there after they've left this hotel, and they pull into a place with some gas.
Yeah.
And you don't really know like how bad it is out there yet. I was acting as though I was in the car with them. I was like, well, do I trust these people? I've seen enough things to know not to trust people.
What are these people doing when they pull up to buy gas?
They just stood there with guns.
Right. Machine guns.
Yeah.
So there are three sort of like schlubby looking men.
Yeah.
They're kind of dirty and they look kind of spent and slovenly. And there's no one else at the gas station. It's not blown up or anything. I mean, obviously you can just pump gas, but they're just there. And then there's this negotiation about getting the gas. So and then the thing that happens, you're like, okay, we've gone beyond, because there's death and murder and torture involved. So you're immediately like, okay, so anywhere we go, we are at serious threat here.
This movie is essentially this road trip from New York to Washington, right?
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, you stop at 5 or 6 places, maybe, or maybe less than that.
Not always intentional, yeah.
Right. And each place has a different vibe to it, but also a realistic, like there's a place that's basically on the surface level, it looks like they're just ignoring what's happening and just acting like normal.
A little town where they drive in and there's nothing bad happening.
Just looks like America.
There are men on the roofs with guns.
Right. If you look with your eyes, everything seems nice.
What they're trying to do there in that town is keep your war out of our town.
Right.
It seems to me they're taking no position, right? They're just like, if you're going to bring that shit here, we will exit you.
Yeah.
As a small town, uninvolved.
And to everybody in the town, we're just operating as normal.
Yeah.
Open your shops, sell your things, let your kids play in the street. We're just normal. So I could see these very realistic scenarios.
Absolutely.
And then you've got like places that are, I was going to say chaos, but we don't really see a chaos place here, do we? Maybe we do, like the Jesse Plemons place.
Yeah, I think that if you add it up, it's all chaos, right? The road that's blocked with abandoned vehicles that looks bombed and whatnot. So that's one, just they're just driving past it. You don't even know what occurred there.
Are not operational.
The truck full of dead bodies that Jesse Plemons has that is dumping in the ground, and the Christmas display in front of a house where a dude and they weren't soldiers, because if you look close,
they were just dudes, I think.
Yeah, and there was a guy shooting from inside, but the question was, which side is he on? And the dudes who he's shooting at are like, we don't that's
know.
Not the point. He's trying to kill us.
He's trying to kill us. We're trying to kill him. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And also there's this Christmas display around. Tell them about the Christmas display and why it's in there.
Yeah, this town they run into, there's a Christmas display. Well, this wasn't actually part of the movie. When they ran into this filming location, this was already there. And what it was a Christmas display, and then the guy had gone bust, but left all the stuff there. So they decided, the director, to keep it. And his whole premise of keeping it was, if you don't take down the Christmas decorations, something must really be wrong.
Yeah, if Christmas display is happening at any other time of the year, and it's all disheveled, it's like falling apart, and it's kind of creepy looking, and it's obviously been sitting there a while, like a zombie apocalypse kind of a scene.
Yeah. Now the movie's beautifully filmed. I was impressed. It's like full frame, not full frame square, but it fills. Did you notice that it fills the whole screen up?
I did not.
And everything's so we're following journalists, so there's a lot of still pictures, right? It turns into this still picture thing every now and then, which is part of the storytelling, which I really liked as well, because, when you see the photographs from real wars, they do look like that.
Let's not forget that point. I want to make very clear that part of the vibe I got is this very split idea that journalists or people wanting to tell the story could be perceived as part of the problem.
Yeah.
That if you have a story to feed where you're shooting photos of people dying and things happening in the world, that you're now creating, first of all, she says it in the movie. She says, I've been to all these war places around the world. I've been sending back pictures all my career because I was trying to tell everybody, hey, don't do this.
Right.
But in reality, what you're doing is making a roadmap, right? You're showing the world how a despot, zealot, dictator can take over a country through showing the photos and telling the story of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can also tell the world how to squash the dictator and why you should squash the dictator, because look at the pictures that we took, right?
I mean, journalism is very powerful, and that is the
It's powerful and dangerous, right? So, and at one point, one character says, they're going to kill all the journalists. The guy's like, we've got press passes. We're safe, which was just a ridiculous idea, right? Even in the world today, I think you should never assume that.
Yeah, why do we have to follow protocol? Because if we're an insane person, why?
Yeah, if I'm a crazy warmonger and I'm killing everybody, I'm definitely going to kill you because as the character in the movie said, they don't want anyone to see what they're doing. So that has to sink in as well. You need someone to show the story, and yet once you show the story and the reality, someone else in the world says, hey, I want to get on board with that.
Yep.
I didn't even know that was a possibility, but I want to be part of that.
It's like free publicity.
It's free publicity, and then it's also chronicling the truth about history, but it also, one person might look at it and be like, oh my God, I never want that to happen. I'm going to make it my life mission for that never to happen. And another person looks at it and says, yes, every idea that I believe in is worth dying for. And I want to be the guy in that picture with the gun over my head and my victim of whatever sword is laying on the ground under me. Right. So to me, that was a big message in the movie.
Yeah.
Because we have one young journalist taking a picture of the older journalist. And so all of a sudden she becomes part of the story, which is, of course, against the rules in journalism on a high level. You're not part of it. But now we're seeing her, our main lady, in the photos, taking photos of the death and destruction, which makes you uncomfortable. It's like, you're like a vulture, right?
Yeah. Talking of action in the movie, some people made out that the trailer made it look like this big action movie. It is not that, right? It does have a bunch of action, especially in the last third. there's less action and more like just, to me, when you look at a road that's just devastated with all cars abandoned, that's action to me.
Absolutely.
I mean, just the visual of that. I don't need to see a tank smashing down there, smashing everything up.
Agree.
Yeah, and this does that. It lingers on like occasionally a skyline with buildings, you know, and you get to see the Washington Monument. That's what we were looking at, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
With smoke and everything, you know, it's very well done, actually. Everything looks super realistic to me. There wasn't 1 second where I was like, oh, that's all green screen. Even though in your mind, you're like, well, surely it is, right? We can't get this close to the real politic buildings.
The politic buildings.
The politic building. The cute little politic building. We can't get this close and make this kind of film. So clearly we have to be on a green screen, but none of it shows to me. It looks very realistic. And I thought the action scene at the end was edge of your seat kind of action scene, because we're with our people, the journalists. There's some really heavy stuff going on, including a tank. You know, they're right in the front line and anything could happen at any minute. And it really does, actually, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very graphic, let's say. So let's get on to the cast. Have you anything else to say about the movie?
I don't know if approaching it from any singular ideology will open you up enough to kind of actually think about not just this as a fictional depiction of a civil war in America, which we've had a civil war. We've also had other battles to take over this land many years before we were ever a country, and other countries right now in the world over all of the history of mankind, right, are constantly in a state of war.
Yep.
Always, all the time. And I'm assuming that a lot of the inspiration for a lot of the images we see, the men in uniform up on top shooting down on the men who have like Hawaiian shirts on and their jeans, and then they're covered with the Kevlar suits and they've got their machine guns. You don't know who's what, right? You don't know who's fighting what. You never find out. You're just following them around.
Right.
But I feel like the photos we end up seeing, you know, the little snapshots, someone has done research to be like, this is how every civil war or war in every country's story is told all the time.
Yeah.
And we don't think anything about it because it's not our town, right? It's not my country's capital. It's not down the street from me. So when you see a picture of someone laying in a street in, say, Ghana or Namibia or someplace else where there's been a vicious, horrible, horrific, same thing, only in now and the very recent past. We're talking 2023, 22, right? You you detach yourself from it. But this, I think if you're a thinking person, it has to make you be like, wow, is anything fucking worth this?
Yeah.
Anything. I don't know. Now, I know it's exhausting, but it's stimulating, and that's what they said in the movie. She said it makes me feel alive, even though like you're at the threat of death and horrible things are happening around you. It like wakes you up.
So let's get on to the cast. Kirsten Dunst plays Lee. She's our photographer, war photographer. She is awesome, I have to say, and I've never seen her this way before in anything else. She's got like a lot of range in this movie. You know, where she's trying on a dress in the store and you kind of see in a bit of her soft side. But then,
not really, but
just a little bit. And like when she's sat on her own, eating on top of the thing, there's a lot going on with her. It doesn't really go into detail, this movie. Like, she never really tells a story about a past or anything, does she? But there is a lot going on. Just looking at her, you just kind of like, I understand the kind of person she is. What do you think?
I completely understand it. I feel like from the very minute we meet her and she's like, she doesn't cry and she's kind of irritated with the young woman who's crying and she's like, you just do it. And this is it. She's almost robotic.
Right.
That she's gone beyond not doing it. But there's no, I feel like the way she plays it at certain points in the movie, she's on a loop. And she's like, I've done this. I've told this. I've showed this. I've taken this picture. I've run from these bullets. I've seen the dead guy in the street. I've seen the guy with the truck full of dead bodies. And it's not even doing anything to me anymore.
Right.
Because there's no end. I feel that vibe from her.
She was
which I think is amazing.
Yeah, she's very good. And then Kaylee Spaney plays Jessie. She's the young lady. Now, at the beginning, we meet this young lady. She's not with them usually, is she?
I mean, usually we meet her right at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, in their prior, like, being journalists. She's not a journalist.
Right. She's new. She's not even anything. She's just at a
Yeah.
protest thing and she's taking pictures. And then our woman happens to save her and then she tags along with them.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. It's not like she's super mothering with her.
Not at all. Not even a little bit.
Apart from when she gets in that other car and you can see she's like, no, she shouldn't be not with us anymore.
Right. Well, she feels, I don't know if that's mothery. I think that's just like protective because she knows what horrible things can happen in this world, you know?
What do you think of this young actress?
She's really good. And I'll tell you, I was convinced from the moment we met her. And then she's like, you're my idol. And she knows who this journalist is. So this journalist must be a famous journalist, right? Because she's got a Wikipedia page. Yeah. And I thought she seemed kind of sneaky, the young woman. Oh. And that when we got to our destination, she will be having told the story of how journalists are causing the problem. Because we hear at one point that Washington, D.C., the president's army are killing all journalists on sight because they're part of the problem, right? Because they're anti-American.
Yeah.
And so I thought she's going to be coming back and the end would be her telling the big story of how this journalist lady and this team of journalists is actually destroying America. Because look at her taking pictures of the dead body. Look at her trying on a dress and smiling in the middle of it all, right? And then
so you thought, I
made that all up. None of that was there.
That's not what it is, no.
And then as the thing went on, I was like, okay, she's now laying in the pile of dead bodies and she's actually completely struck emotionally by this. And maybe she's going to change. I made up that whole narrative and she was none of that. No. So I feel like she was really good, at least in my story that I was telling.
We've got Wagner Moura as Joel. He's another journalist who's along with them.
Yeah, and he tells the story of how he portrays it as this guy. He's a journalist, and he kind of gets off on it. Like the action gets him, he said at one point, gets him excited. And he's not even about getting the images so much. It's like being in it.
Yeah.
And so you can be like, well, see, there's a case for this journalistic view of someone who's fueling the fire by enjoying the process at some level.
At one point he says, look at all that gunfire over there, gunfire. It's getting me hard.
Yeah, and it's like
I've got to be over there.
He doesn't realize. It's like he's the one that keeps saying, we've got press passes, we're good. We got press passes, we're good. As if he's immune.
Yeah.
Like he's above everything. There's a story of a journalist who's thinking that, right? I'm above it. Like I'm not part of this war. I'm just along for the joyride. And then something horrible happens that affects him.
Yep.
And then the shit hits the fan in his mind. You know, it's different.
We've also got Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays Sammy. We've seen this actor a lot in lots of different things. He's one of those that what you call
anonymous famous.
He's from Kansas City, Missouri, by the way, just looking at his thing.
Right on.
And he plays Sammy, and he's another journalist who's older.
He works for a newspaper, so it's got a different type. Well, just a newspaper. So he represents the old school journalism.
Yeah.
Where he kind of knows the ins and outs and he's really only about telling the truth of the story. And yet he's an older man and he's overweight and they keep commenting that he can't run and he's maybe a liability of some sort. So I think that's directly related to the idea of how old journalism tells the story even. I mean, I might have made that up, but I felt that vibe.
He has an incredible hero moment in this movie.
He does.
Which I was like, yes.
Right on.
Everybody gets a moment of something. Like even though it's not super like going into the characters, you do understand everybody. I feel like that is a well-made movie.
Agree.
Nick Offerman plays the president of the United States of America.
And what did I say? I think they made him picked a funny guy because Nick's a comedian guy. I mean, he can be serious too because he was in Fargo. Right?
Yeah.
One of the early Fargos. It's just that because he's a bit of a clown and then in the end, he's portrayed he's trying to give his State of the Union address or whatever. In the beginning, he's practicing and he kind of looks kind
nervous,
of foolish. And then
also.
in the end, he's just sort of a sniveling nothing. He's not brave. He's not anything. Then you think like, who's following this guy? Right? Like, so that's why I'm glad they didn't pick some, hardcore. Feel like it was a good choice.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that he's a comedian, then you might not extrapolate that.
No, but I kind of always do. Yeah. Directed by Alex Garland. He also directed Men, Ex Machina, and he wrote 28 Days Later with Danny Boyle. What do you think?
Those movies are very different from this movie.
Very different. Yeah.
Think about it. If you haven't seen the movie Men, don't think it's like a romp on an island with a bunch of dudes having a party. No.
That was his last movie, and he did that one for A24 as well. And that really fits within A24's catalog.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has range. We'll give him that. And I mean, the delicate balance of not preaching to me as the viewer, like I'm consuming this entertainment, that the only message I get, the two messages, the main messages are, what is an idea worth destroying your nation over, about, because we don't even have one in this movie, and about thinking about telling the story and how we tell the story and consume the story. And it's just a perpetual loop. Like you tell the story and someone wants to make more story, and then you make more story and somebody wants to make more story. And that's all I got. I did not get a political message, a religious message. I didn't feel preached at. And I have, my own views about politics and whatnot. I didn't feel any pressure to be like, roll my eyes and go, oh, thanks
I find
for
that
lecturing me.
Makes this stand out.
Absolutely.
And some people would say it makes it not stand out. It makes it just meh.
Yeah, but that's what you don't want your entertainment to necessarily, and we've even commented on other movies that when it slams you in the face with a message,
You just feel a bit affronted, don't you?
You feel like, let me think about this issue. Now, if you want to have a full-on message with your entertainment or your art, that's cool too, because some people believe art should only exist to deliver a message or a high idea of some kind. Actually, people do believe that. But I like it's kind of like you're giving me everything and nothing at the same time. And I love that. I get to decide for myself. And you know me as a human being, that's kind of my vibe.
All right. IMDB reviews. What are those?
I'm interested in these. These are reviews that you find on the imdb.com that give it a 1 star, because usually these days, because the movie's too woke, or it is a waste of time, or of course it's slanted one way or another, blah, blah, blah. So.
All right, we start with the wasted the time guy. He says, I've wasted 2 hours of my life and probably 2 years of my hearing. It does have an incredible audio scenario going on. Surround, gunfire, explosions. It is a loud movie when it has to be. And then there are times where there's no audio at all. Nothing.
And I think our audio is just set up really well by you. And so it's not offensive in any way.
No, but if you went to a theater and it was turned up to 11, maybe it would assault you, but that's what he's probably saying. He says, I went in expecting a thrilling, realistic, emotional depiction of what America would come to if we continue the division and polarization we are currently in. But just 10 minutes in, the dramatic and obnoxious sound effects and the complete lack of context and storyline had me contemplating whether to walk out. I left the theater feeling deeply unsatisfied and confused. I wasted almost 2 hours of my life and probably 2 years of my hearing.
The waste of time one it's a favorite. It's a classic.
Second guy says, the film title is very deceptive. I should have known that there was something wrong when I went to see this film. I was literally the only person in the theater. The title of the film and the trailer are pure clickbait. You were given the impression that the film is about a civil war in the US with thinly veiled MAGA supporters. Instead, the film is really about 4 war reporters on a boring road trip. Yeah, so there's that guy.
There's that guy. Or gal or somebody. We don't know.
And the third person says, riding around in cars with journalists. I see what he did there. He says there's no context as to why there's civil unrest. So a few journalists decide to drive across the country. experiencing the atrocities that all human beings can do to each other with no context. All they witness is a small-minded insurrection by backwards people. The plot is frankly ridiculous. You'll get the drift of this movie if you just fast forward through it. Pathetic show. I love it when people call a movie a show.
Yeah, because only people who make movies are allowed.
Yes.
Because they all call it a show.
Our podcast is called After the Show. And that was mainly because I found it funny that people called a movie a show. So there's a little bit of insight. Anyway, those are the IMDB reviews. We didn't see any extras, but we can give this movie a score. I'm going to give Civil War an 8 out of 10.
I'm going 9.8.
Ooh, that's really high.
It's because it's well made.
It is.
I don't feel taught or told.
Did you feel like you was going to feel that way when you came out of it?
Absolutely, 100%.
Right.
I thought, okay, we're going to be like leaning against, like that guy was saying, either against a current administration or for a big idea to like kill fascism or something. And I got none of that. And so I feel like that's I was just looking for the look what we do to each other.
Yeah. Humanity, what humanity can do.
Yeah.
On both sides, how they can help each other, how they can be horrible. Right?
Absolutely. And it's not just an American idea. That's like everywhere. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. So thank you to A24. Next week, we're looking at The First Omen, which is the prequel to The Omen. Yeah. Did you like The Omen? Because I did. I really like it.
I liked it, but it's old, and you know what? You can come up with some new shit.
Yeah.
Not you. You could. But then, I say this a lot, and I'm an intelligent, creative person. I could write my own story and then somehow get it to somebody who would eventually make it into a movie, potentially, right? Because everything that's a movie was nothing at first. And yet I don't. And so when I complain, but just write my own shit. I don't.
Anyhow, we're going to watch The First Omen next week. So, go and read your cliff notes of what happened in The Omen, if you need to.
It's a possessed child. It's not that complicated. There's a Jekyll involved. It's quite outrageous, even for the 70s.
Yeah. All right, movie recommendations. I am going on a movie that Alex Garland made, Men. We mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
It's wackadoodle. I would call it.
Yes.
I really, really liked it because I like movies that just go, fuck it. We're just going to go extreme.
When you say you like it, and now someone goes and watches it, and then they recall that you said how much you like it, they're going to be like,
I do like a bit of extreme cinema, and I would put that in that place. You know?
Yes. I don't know about extreme, but it's getting up there.
My favorite war movie, I was thinking war movies, which is my favorite. It's Apocalypse Now, and it always has been. I watched it, in my 20s. And to me, that is a very... like this feels realistic. I feel like that feels realistic too.
I have to watch it again because I feel like it's over.
And it's almost in the same vein as this movie. It's like a road trip. He gets his orders. He's got to go from this one place to the other. And along the way, it's very bizarre, right?
I don't remember in detail, but
it's exceptional, I think. So Apocalypse Now and Men.
And I am going to go back to the 20th century, which is 1900 to 1999. For all you kids who don't know about the 1900s, they did exist. We were born back in the day. And these are all adventure and or action movies that I've seen. I'm not talking about the quality. You just get to know what movies have filtered through my head, basically. Inglourious Bastards by Mr. Quentin Tarantino, which, of course, is, anti-fascism. The Sorcerer's Stone, which is Harry Potter. I don't remember any message from that movie at all. Oz, the Great and Powerful, also just a origination story of
James Franco,
the Wizard of Oz. Chronicles of Narnia, and The Golden Compass, which both kind of live in the same arena there, don't they?
I think all three of those all live in the same.
And the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah. Like fantasy.
The 20th century brought us a lot of fantasy.
Family-friendly fantasy. Let's call it that.
True.
All right. Ascully stuff. We watched we're a bit late to the party here because this TV show came out in 2021. and it's now 2024. But we finally got around to watching it, and we watched the TV show Severance on Apple TV. Cidtalk, what do you think of
Love
Severance? It was, you know what? I'll give it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, absolutely. Well, I'm going to have to ding it a little bit because it's just a carrot on a stick. It's free to watch the next season, which I find really obnoxious and rude. And if I could talk to Ben Stiller about that, I would. Other than that, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those ones, though, like Yellow Jackets. When Yellow Jackets ended, I was like, I actually want to see another season. I love this.
Right. Well, this one you have to because it doesn't actually write you through to any conclusions of the story, which I find really irritating. And yet again, I could just write my own.
They're instantly some of my favorite characters I've ever watched. And also instantly, it's some of the mind-bendingly, you have to think a little bit about this whole thing because of the premise. Go and watch it. Severance, Apple TV. There's one season and a new season is coming in fall, so it's excellent. And I've also been playing a video game called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's the sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon, and it was the story of Ichiban, which I really got into when it came out a few years ago. Was it during the pandemic when I played Ichiban?
I don't even remember.
You saw me playing it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up playing like 90 or 100 hours of that game. Well, this is the sequel. Takes place in Hawaii instead of Japan. So far, I've probably played 15 to 20 hours of it. And it is very much like the first game with a new story. But there's so many more things to do. It's like everywhere I go in the game, like, oh, I'll just go around this corner. Oh, here's a whole new thing for you to do. And go around this corner. Here's a whole mini game that you can unlock the high score. You know, it's crazy how much stuff's in it. It's called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's part of the Yakuza series. And I don't think you need to have played the one before it, but you don't need to have played the 7 before that. I mean, it's a long-running series. It's really fun. It's an RPG, open world, and I'm playing it on the PS5. Cidtalk, what's for dinner?
You have determined we're going to be having the Jersey Mike's.
Correct. We've had some good meals this week.
Absolutely. Marley Spoon. We're not sponsored, but you make some good, and you cook it, so it's always good.
Yeah, because I am a good cook.
We do the meal boxes like 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah, and they're really good.
You can judge us if you want. I don't give a shit. Some people think it's really weird.
That you would cook out of a meal box?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I can't even get a straight answer. It's like, so you go to the grocery store and you shop for stuff and you put it in a basket and you put it in a bag and you bring it home and you unload it and then you cut it up and you cook it. This is like someone else does the shopping for you and gives you the recipe, puts it in a box, you bring it up, it comes to your house, you chop it up, you cook it and you eat it. I don't even understand.
No, and and it also educates you. Like, you might just go to the store and get the same thing all the time.
Absolutely. We had lentil stew last night that was amazing.
Yeah, we end up eating things where we're like, we would never think to make that.
And also, you wouldn't want to buy all the ingredients for everything because then you have all the ingredients over the top, of course. Like, you buy a whole jar of a thing and you don't need the whole jar future cooking. I
totally think meal boxes are a valid way of cooking.
And now it can be expensive, so we have our own little system of making sure it's not too expensive. But I mean, you have to figure that shit out for yourself. But I love it. All
right. So yeah, we had a bunch of that stuff. Cidtalk.
What's my advice? Well, it's kind of coming from this movie, you know? And also, I think this as a person anyway, I'm always like thinking this kind of thing. And I think about my parents. They're both, my father's been gone for a few years, but they're both very, very independent people, like very anti-organized anything, right? I wasn't taught to be a rebel or anything. They went along with society and they had jobs and made money. And there's nothing overtly like revolutionary about us or anything like that. However, I think I've come to the conclusion that if any idea that I think is worth dying for or killing for, right? The accumulation of all the things of my life and I've observed and felt and experienced and been educated and all that. If I think, oh, here's an idea that is so worthy and so noble and so above everything else that I would die for it. I would kill for it, to defend it, to keep it going. So other people follow the same idea, right? If I do that, then I have to accept that every other idea that every other human has come to the same conclusion about, regardless of my opinion of how their idea might look in the world, right? But from their point of view, from that perspective, every idea is the same. The outcome would be different. If you want to rule the world and say that everyone in the world deserves a chance to have free healthcare and free education and free houses and a house, a home, and a certain standard of living, and we want to make that happen in the whole world, and we're willing to kill and die for it, right? Sounds great. But someone else is going to say, I don't think everyone should have exactly the same, because that means no one gets freedom to have more or less or whatever. So I'm going to live and die by my idea, which is you don't get to decide for me that how hard I work spills over to pay for someone else's house, right? So no matter what you think, there's someone else who has an idea that they are equally willing to destroy you for. If you think about it that way, it blows your mind a little bit. It's really hard, and I get it. Some people would find that as a reason to commit to an idea and be like, well, then I'm going to stand for this, and no matter what, I'm going down with the ship, right? People like me go like, wait a minute, why can't we just figure it out? right? So you can like balance shit out. I don't know. And that's probably impossible. But so every idea is essentially the same. It just looks different in the real world. So I don't even think that's not advice. That's nothing. That's just me dumping my mind out for you.
Exactly. All right. So ascully.com is the place you can go to get this podcast. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media places. You can also catch this podcast at Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, all over the place, anywhere where podcasts are available. Email feedback to me, ascully@ascully.com. Do not email Cidtalk. She doesn't want your email. And stay classy, A24. Keep bringing us great movies.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say, think for yourself or someone is doing it for you.